Chapter 24. Kill the Beast. Doc was more than happy to comply with Gaston's request to put Maurice in the sanatorium if Belle did not agree to marry him. It was clear Doc knew very well that Maurice was just an odd little man who loved only one thing more than his clanking apparatuses, and that was his daughter, Belle. And Belle loved no one more than her father. Gaston almost felt bad going to these lengths, but there was something that kept pushing him, as if some strange power had a hold on him. And it wasn't just Belle's beauty, it was something else. Maybe it was fate. He didn't know. All he knew was that he had to marry her, and he would do anything to convince her to say yes. Since he was attacked in the woods, it felt like there was something missing, something he couldn't explain. He had a strange, hollow feeling, like he'd lost something important, or someone important, like he wasn't whole, but he didn't know what it was. Once he'd realized he had feelings for Belle, he had started to feel like maybe once she was his wife, he could feel right and whole again. It seemed Doc was in content with their arrangement, and why wouldn't he be? Gaston made sure his coffers were filled, and Doc was happy to have made a new alliance with Gaston. Together, they were about to partake in some good old-fashioned skullduggery. Even Gaston had to admit how intimidating Doc now appeared, illuminated in the torchlight as they stood in front of Belle's home. It seemed to Gaston this man loved nothing more than causing fear, and that was a trait Gaston admired. Gaston and his mob were gathered in full force in front of Belle and Maurice's home. They stood near Doc's wagon, which was ready to take Maurice away should Belle refuse to marry Gaston. They were a rowdy bunch Gaston had collected at the tavern. There was nothing quite as menacing as a group of hooligans after a long night of drinking, with gold in their pockets and hate in their hearts, all of which, in this case, was supplied by Gaston. There was little doubt Belle would marry him now. She couldn't possibly resist, nor do better. Who else in town would have her, with all her strange ways? And how could she say no under the circumstances? He'd make it up to her after they were married. She would be the happiest woman alive. Who wouldn't be? After all, she would be married to him. And with that, he knocked on her door. Belle answered the knock tentatively, with eyes full of fear. "May I help you? I've come to collect your father," said Doc. His withered, skull-like face looked horrid and menacing in the torchlight. "My father?" She looked confused. "Don't worry, mademoiselle. We'll take good care of him," said Doc with a face like death itself. Gaston could see Belle was seized with fear. She understood what was happening at once. She saw Doc's wagon in the distance. She knew they were taking her father to the asylum. "No, you can't do this," she said, hopelessly trying to stop them. She was afraid and desperate, and her look of betrayal and loathing almost made Gaston call it all off. Something about the fear in her eyes reminded him of someone, a woman who was hurt, not by him, but by his complicity. What was he doing? But his head started to swirl again. The voices were back, urging him on, telling him he would be a laughingstock if Belle didn't marry him, that he would be alone, that he would die if he didn't marry Belle. So he shook his head, freeing himself of his doubts, and went on with his plan, and it should have worked. It was a simple, straightforward plan. If Belle agreed to marry him, he would talk Doc out of taking her father away. Belle was headstrong. He expected that, and in a way admired her for it. But what he didn't expect was proof. Her father had actually seen a beast. She raised up a hand mirror and revealed the monster for all of them to see, and he was shocked, shook to his very core. Gaston couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was the same beast that attacked him in the woods, the same beast that killed his parents. He didn't understand why he hadn't believed Maurice from the moment he asked for help. Gaston couldn't figure out what was wrong with him lately. It was almost as if he had forgotten he was attacked at all. His head had been so muddled, and all he seemed to think or care about was Belle. But seeing that monster in Belle's mirror triggered something, a spark, and he knew he had seen that beast before. And what was wrong with Belle defending this monster? Did he just hear her say it was kind and gentle? Had the beast cast some sort of love spell on her, binding her to him forever? This was insanity. If I didn't know better, I'd say you had feelings for this monster, he said, looking at Belle. He's no monster, Gaston. You are. Gaston was sure Belle was under some wicked enchantment. Clearly this beast had some kind of magic. How else would she have gotten this magic mirror if not from the beast? This was madness. She was delusional. She's as crazy as the old man, he said as he snatched the mirror from her hand. He had to do something. He had to break this evil curse the beast put on Belle. It all made sense now. Why she didn't want to marry him. Why she never paid him any attention. It must have been the beast's influence all along, enchanting her somehow from afar, luring her to its lair, where it could have her all to himself. Well, he wasn't going to let Belle be locked away forever. He wasn't going to let it stalk the countryside, killing more innocent people. He was going to put an end to this creature and break the evil spell it put on his darling Belle. Once the spell was broken, she would see, and she would forgive what he had to do to protect her and everyone else in town. He would kill the beast.